Good afternoon and welcome to the January 15th, 2025 Technical Review Committee meeting. This meeting is now in session. My name is Ryan Fisher. I'm the Director of Oldham County Planning and Development. The purpose of the Technical Review Committee is to review proposed subdivisions, zoning map amendments, and development plans before they go forward to the Planning Commission. This gives local agencies and utility companies, the agencies represented here in front of you today, the opportunity to review those plans, discuss and comment about the accessibility of services to those projects, and ensure that all aspects of the development plans adhere to zoning and subdivision regulations. This meeting does also provide adjoining property owners and concerned citizens in attendance the opportunity to ask technical questions of the applicants or agencies represented before you today. And I will read in if you received an adjoining property owner notification, on the back side of the letter, it specifically says that citizens in attendance may raise concerns or ask questions about technical aspects or issues regarding specific developments. No testimony in favor or against the application will be taken by the TRC. That will be done at the Planning Commission level. So anybody that comes up to speak will just need you to state your name and address for the record, and then it has to be a question that's technical in nature of either the applicant or the agencies represented before you today. All right, there will be an opportunity if they go forward for opposition in favor or against. All right. With that, if everybody could make sure that your phones are silenced or on vibrate, if you do have to take a phone call for any sort, just please step out of the room for us. There is one case on the agenda today. If you are here for the other case that was on the original agenda, which is Oldham County Townhomes, that has been removed from the agenda and will be in the February docket. So the only case on the docket today is TRC 25-001, which is the Pine Grove subdivision at 10201 Highway 329 in Prospect. So the way the case will work, we will have the applicant come forward first and give a brief presentation of their application. We will then allow the agencies that are represented in front of you to provide comments to the applicant, and then we will open it up to the floor for any citizen comment or question, once again technical in nature. And we'll just ask that you state your name and address clearly for the record. We have our new planner will be taking notes for the first time in his life, so just speak clearly for him so he gets the notes correct for the normal note taker. So with that, we'll have the applicant or his representative come forward and give a brief presentation.
Make sure the mic is on. Mike Swansburg, law firm of Swansburg and Smith, 117 West Main Street here in LaGrange. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Here to introduce myself. Also, I have the honor, by the way, of representing Triple Springs Partners, LLC, which is the owner of the property, which is the source of the application before you today, and has been the source of the application for which you have reviewed and provided comments and will expect to provide comments here shortly. I'm also accompanied today by Walt Shum, Bob Jones, and Bob Vinsan, who are also either interested parties or, in Mr. Vinsan's case, the lucky recipient of the engineer award for this case. And he gets to stand up here and give a brief presentation as well as answer any technical questions that you all might have or that the public might have as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sit down and be happy to answer any questions that I might be able to, but otherwise I'm going to turn it over at this point to Mr. Vinsan to answer or to address any technical issues that you all might have. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon. Do I have to be sworn? Okay.
Nope, just state your name and address.
All right. My name is Bob Vinsan. I'm with Vinsan Engineering and Land Surveying. My address is 1000 Cherrywood Place, Suite 200, here in LaGrange. I'm here representing the clients, Triple Springs. Okay. With the Pine Grove proposed subdivision. Could we put the overhead on? Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. We're proposing 93 lots on 156.4 acres with a minimum lot size of 1 acre, the net acreage of which is 1.53 acres per lot. To the east of the development is the existing Constantine Farms. To the north is Harrods Creek and the Mason Lane Farm. To the west is a farm owned by the Browns. And then to the south is Highway 329. The very front part of the property is zoned R2 with the balance being AG1 and CO1. Our road construction will be 22-foot wide pavement with open ditches. There will be 5 detention basins that are being proposed to ensure that the runoff rates are not increased. And based on the results from this meeting, we do believe that all utilities are available for use for this project. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we'll open it up to agency comments, and we'll start with Anna Barge, our senior planner, who will have planning and development comments. And then if she received any other comments from agencies, she can read those as well at this time.
Okay, and also, if you want to go ahead and take the comments from planning and development and for engineering. Yes. So the first comment is consult with USPS postmaster about the type of mailboxes required, pretty standard from us. Indicate the areas of substantial trees with a general description of their types and sizes. Include a notation of existing man-made features. I wasn't sure if the existing, I believe, if I understand correctly, the existing house is going to be parceled off as a separate, is not part of this project, is what I'm saying. Okay, I just want to confirm that. Then if there are any features that are any structures that are part of this that are going to remain or be removed, indicate those. And then include the amount of open space and lot coverage. Note the amount of parking spaces if there's any required. Update that list of addresses. There's just some minor updates on those. And that's everything for this from planning and zoning.
All right. You didn't receive any other letters from
No
anyone?
letters from other agencies.
All right. With that, we'll go to Jim Silliman, our county engineer.
Thank you. And as this is I'll say, fairly typical subdivision with, obviously there's greater than 1 acre of disturbance. So as is typical, you'll be required to get your stormwater stormwater quality management and erosion control permit from our office. And at that point, you'll submit your construction plans. You'll also be required to get the KYR 10 permit from the Kentucky Division of Water. There's also 2 mapped blue line streams, based on review of the USGS mapping. It looks like your lot layout and road layout is configured to reduce or eliminate impact to those, but be aware that if there is any impact to those streams, that appropriate permitting from the Division of Water or the Army Corps of Engineers would be required, or we would want to see those permits or coordination from them. The letter that Anna provided includes some additional detail regarding typical detention and stormwater design, which Mr. Vincent, you're aware of. You can refer to those standards in the letter. Similarly, we've also referenced the road geometric design in that letter. Speaking of roads, though, since your entrance connects to Kentucky Highway 329, I'm sure you're aware that you'll be required to get a encroachment permit from the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. And based on the anticipated trip generation of this site, which is probably around 92 or 93 trips for the peak hour, and the traffic volumes on 329, this would require a traffic assessment in accordance with Oldham County subdivision regulations. I'm aware from previous correspondence or earlier correspondence between your traffic engineer and Jason Richardson at the state that a traffic impact study was being scoped. So that will be provided, need to be provided before a planning commission hearing. I think that's all I have.
All right. Matt Toller with GIS and addressing.
Just typical comments for me, just get with me with the street name. And then the only other question I have is, on lot 78, that existing house, is that going to remain there? Because that will have to have an address change, since it won't be a 329 address anymore.
The old house that was built probably in around 1840 will not be in this first section. It will be in the second section of our development. We have no intention of tearing that down. Hopefully, we can sell it to somebody that would like to rehab it and put it back in what would be a really...
Is there another one in addition to this lot 78? Because it says existing home. It's in this section.
Is it? It's not in this.
The existing home that's right there is that older house, the historic house? Okay, so what he's, yeah.
We're dividing it in two sections. The front section will be here, and the second section will be back
Oh.
here. Okay?
Oh, no, yeah, I mean, that's fine if you're going to keep it there. Just know that that's not going to be a 329 address
Yeah,
at some
we'll just,
point.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, those are the end of my comments.
All right, Charlie?
Charlie Ward, the Environmental Health Director at the Oldham County Health Department. So just to go over my role with this in the Health Department being on-site sewage disposal. So with the map that's up there, every red dot is a test hole that was dug. We like to do preliminary subdivision site evaluations. It is a very broad brushstroke, general kind of just interpretation of what expectations are when it comes to on-site sewage disposal. It's one of those, do we hit a lot of rock very shallow? Are we going to need to stockpile dirt? Are there sinkholes, drainage ditches, topography, things that are kind of a preemptive planning before you start laying out property lines that become, rock hard, and then it's like, well, we got a sinkhole in the middle of a lot. Maybe we should rewrite that property line. So I have letters for Ryan and one for you all as well. I'll be perfectly frank, this is one of the best preliminary subdivision site evaluations I have done in my 13 years with the health department. We dug 30 holes. Holes were dug to 42 inches deep, which is your standard depth when doing a site evaluation. There were no restrictions. There was no presence of groundwater. These should all theoretically be 24-inch deep, which is as deep by code will allowed, full depth installation septic systems. Again, in my over a decade of doing this, I have never seen something that was so, I want to say perfect, because nothing is perfect, but as far as the installation of septic systems on this property, these is not going to be fingers crossing, losing sleep at night. Oh my God, I hope it's going to work. Beautiful soil. It's Kreider soil. It's some of the nice siltiest loamy soil that I've had to see in the past. So that being said, though, that there are 93 lots, one of them being for an existing house, so there's 92 in total. I will come back and do 92 individual site evaluations for every one of these properties for when or if they're going to be built upon. Because again, this was just a very broad brushstroke. We spent the day out there digging these test holes just to get a general interpretation and feel. But every one of these lots will have me come back out there, do another specific site evaluation for that property, which is all installed in accordance to the number of bedrooms that they wish to have in the house. There are really kind of the big concerns or just issues that I need to be aware of out there are going to be the setback distances. There is a natural gas line that does bifurcate through the property that will have a setback distance that we'll be aware of. Those detention basins, those will have a large setback distance, so lateral fields will have to be installed a certain distance away from them. The drainage and the utility easements as well. There is a 1 acre minimum county ordinance in the county for anything to be serviced by on-site sewage that was developed in May of 1989 by the health department. These all satisfy that being at least 1 acre or more and change. But yeah, as far as honestly, I was very happy to basically every test hole, one after the other, was just beautiful soil. So, but again, I will go back out there 92 times and do individual site evaluations for every home as they're to be built and installed. So there'll be an exact specific location for every one of these lots. So I will be back out there again. I got 17 years till I retire. I'm probably going to do every one of these myself, which is fine. I love doing this. I love my job. So you got your letters and letters. I think that's all I have.
All right. Thank you. A couple other agencies that we did set nameplates out for because we were expecting them possibly to be here. But one of the comments, water supply for fire protection. I don't know if, I know this is, I believe in Louisville Waters service area. So just to make sure that I didn't see any proposed or anything fire hydrants on there, but I'm sure you all have already started those conversations. And then typically Michael Williams with our school board is here to give a school capacity number. He is not here, so that'll be something prior to the planning commission that the school board will dictate the number of building permits that will be provided per year if this project is approved. And then just for the public's knowledge, if there's any further development on this parcel of land outside of what you see here today, just know that that has to go through this process the same way again, if there's further development on other parcels of land around here. So just for your all's awareness on that. With that, we'll now allow adjoining property owners the opportunity to speak. Just simply raise your hand and I'll call on you. Come up and then state your name and address for the record. And once again, technical questions in nature of either the agencies represented before you or the applicant themselves.
Yes, my name is Steve Porter. I'm an attorney, 2406 Tucker Station Road, Louisville, and I represent a number of the adjoining property owners, many of whom are here. I have a question for the developer because I tried to get Mr. Fisher to postpone this meeting today because we don't think that the developer has complied with the regulations. And so at this point, since there's already been something that has happened, I would ask that a second TRC meeting be held on this project because the developer has not complied, and I would ask the developer to comply. And specifically, what I'm talking about, we have an identified group of neighbors that notices were sent out to for a neighborhood meeting. Then after that neighborhood meeting, the Step 2 in Section 3.3 of the subdivision regulations says, the subdivider shall submit with the preliminary plat a sign-in sheet from the meeting and a statement detailing issues raised at the required meeting with the neighbors and solutions or consolations presented or proposed. A copy of the sign-in sheet and that statement shall be mailed by the developer to each identified neighbor, whether present or absent at the meeting. That has not occurred. And I want to ask the developer why that has not occurred, and would ask the committee to instruct the developer to conform with the regulation, the subdivision regulation, to prepare a list, a copy of the sign-in sheet, and a statement, and this is important, a statement raised at the detailing issues raised at the required meeting with the neighbors and solutions or consolations presented or proposed. We haven't seen any of that. None of that has been mailed. Also, just a small technical issue. I know that there's a requirement that for people to send in questions or comments, and some of the neighbors received that letter the day that those comments would be required. So they really didn't have time to submit those. There are probably people here who may submit questions or ask questions. But what we're asking for at this point is that absolutely there should be another TRC meeting on this case after and only after the developer has mailed out the copy of the sign-in sheet. And it really doesn't matter whether anybody signed the sign-in sheet or not. Because this is if nobody signed it, then that's fine. They still have to mail it out to the identified neighbors. That list of identified neighbors is certain. There's no question who those people are. Whether they were at the meeting, whether they signed the sign-in sheet or not, doesn't matter. And that statement with the solutions or consolations proposed as a result of the comments that were made at the neighborhood meeting. So we're asking that there be a second TRC meeting next month or whenever the committee decides, so that The neighbors will have had a chance to review that statement, and then we'll be able to have questions regarding what the developer has proposed in that statement. Now, looking at some technical issues, we have questions about stormwater. We have questions about the possibility of forever chemicals being used on these 93 lots that would go into the water surrounding the area and into Harrods Creek eventually because of people putting chemicals on their lawns. We have questions about the fire safety, and sorry that the fire department is not here, and that would be another good reason to have another TRC. I think the fire department should be here to be sure and tell us whether they have looked at the possible turnarounds and the access to the property, whether that is the way it is laid out, whether that is possible, and whether there is fire hydrant possibilities there, enough water pressure. We're concerned about the rest of the property. There is some property adjacent to this as part of the total property that is not identified as anything happening to it. We need to know what is going to happen to that. And there was a mention of the pipeline, and that's good. That was one of our concerns also, is what's going to happen around the pipeline. Has the developer adequately made corrections of their plan to accommodate the pipeline and the necessity of having distances from that pipeline property? So just in summary, our request is that there be another TRC meeting so we can hear from the fire department and health department, or and the school board, and that the developer has sent out what it is required to send out under the subdivision regulations so that my clients can review those and would then have adequate questions regarding that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to go ahead and respond to the first part of the first question? I'll handle the second part.
If I can, I'm not trying to be coy, but I'm not sure I heard a question within that statement, Mr. Chairman. My understanding, based on the usual practice of the Planning and Zoning Office, Planning Commission, and the Planning and Zoning staff, is that a neighborhood meeting is held, and it has to be held generally prior to the date upon which you file your application. And then that information is provided along with mailing labels to the Planning Commission staff, and then that information all gets sent out to the adjoining neighbors, including all the information that might have been presented. So I'll be honest with you, I don't actually have a history in any subdivision or other plan that I've ever been a part of where there's been a requirement by anyone that the developer actually present, prior to applying for TRC review, a list of who attended the neighborhood meeting along with any questions as an obligation of the actual developer himself, herself, or itself. So at this point, my understanding is that information was all provided as part of the application process, which is what is required. And it is my understanding that's what is only required of the developer at that point. And that information could be made available to the public through the planning and zoning staff if that is what they so choose. But I'm not sure that there's some other requirement necessitating the need for an additional TRC hearing. And I would just note again that there is an opportunity again for individuals to have comments, questions, concerns about this proposal at the Planning Commission, at which point they can make all the concerns that they've raised today known to that body as part of that particular process. My understanding for today, Mr. Chairman, as you've already indicated, is to receive feedback and receive questions of a technical nature related to the proposal so that they might be incorporated into a final plan to be submitted to the commission as part of its consideration of the proposal. And that's why we are here. So I'm not entirely sure that there's a need for another technical review committee. I don't know that there was a question otherwise to address at this point, but we're certainly happy to answer any questions that might be raised of a technical nature by the commission or by anyone out in the public that may be relevant to this, and that we can, in fact, answer at this juncture after having incorporated all the information we received from you all, as well as any other agency that is out there that has provided that information. So I don't know if that actually answers the question. Mr. Chairman, that would be my response to that initial part, and I understand you had a second part to that.
Yeah, so I'll touch a little bit on, hold on just a second. I'll answer the question on, so the way the subdivision regulations are written, and as Mr. Porter said, is that they shall submit a copy of the sign-in sheet and statement mailed by the developer to each identified neighbor. But the way it reads, and when Mr. Porter emailed me yesterday, and I told him we were going to continue with the hearing today, because frankly, there's no decisions that are made at this hearing. It is simply an opportunity for agencies to provide comments, for the public to comment about technical comments that may potentially have them change their plans prior to going to the Planning Commission. So no decisions are made at this meeting. No approvals are given at this meeting. It's simply the agencies providing comments. The agencies that I did mention, the school board, and the fire department were notified of this project. They were given those plans. We have heard nothing from the fire department about issues with turnaround. We've heard no issues from the water company about being able to provide fire protection. According to our subdivision regulations, they're going to have to abide by the fire suppression, fire protection standards. If not, they'll have to ask for a waiver from that or provide another means accessible. We have not heard from the developer that that's to occur. So we've heard no comments from the fire department or no comments from the water company saying that there's issues with either of those. The school board prior to Planning Commission will give us that school capacity number, and he'll present that at the Planning Commission hearing. So I didn't feel as if this meeting today needed to be postponed because there's no decisions that are made at this hearing. So the way the subdivision regulations read, it says the subdivider shall submit with the preliminary plat or at the next required step, which is this hearing, a sign-in sheet from the meeting and a statement detailing issues raised at the required meeting with the neighbors, and solutions or consolations presented or proposed, period. That's the end of that sentence. With the TRC application, they submitted the sign-in sheet from the neighborhood meeting as well as notes from that meeting, all right? That is required for the TRC application. They provided that in the time needed. The second sentence of that says a copy of the sign-in sheet and statement shall be mailed by the developer to each identified neighbor, whether present or absent at the meeting, period. So that does say that, but it does not say that they must do that prior to the TRC. It does not say that they, hold on, Mr. Porter, I'll call on you in just a second. It does not say that they have to do that to be heard at the TRC. It doesn't say any of that. It simply says that that will be mailed. I would ask that the applicant go ahead and do that to everybody, send that sign-in sheet for what it matters, all right? Send that to all the adjoining property owners, but it does not say anywhere in that that has to be done prior to TRC. It simply says the sentence before that they must provide us with a copy that they had a neighborhood meeting. The second part of that I'd comment on is that on January 2nd, our office sent out adjoining property owner notices. Now, obviously, there was a snowstorm in there. There was mail delivery that was delayed because of President Carter's funeral. We have no control over the post office. But at the end of the month, we put all of our agendas together for the month. And January 2nd, after January 1st was a holiday, so our first day back, we send out that mailing. We are more than happy, and this even goes for the Planning Commission, to take comments from the public by email up to the date of the hearing. I know the letter says something differently, but we are more than happy to take. I just responded today to an email from an individual, and I told him his email would be put into the record. So we are more than happy to take comments on that. But those were sent out January 2nd. If those weren't received at your house when you mail from the LaGrange post office and it doesn't get to you all in a week, I don't know what I can do besides going and hand delivering everything to you. So that's my second part of that first question. If you want to come up and...
I want to make it clear that my problem is not with Ryan. The problem is with the developer not doing what the subdivision regulations require. And the next sentence, after it's saying a copy of the sign-in sheet and this statement shall be mailed to each identified neighbor, says the pre-preliminary plat would then be submitted in its original or amended form for consideration by the Technical Review Committee. So then, after that letter is mailed, that sign-in sheet and that statement is mailed to the identified neighbors, then the preliminary plat would be submitted, and that has not occurred. And all I'm asking for is just for the neighbors to be able to get from the developer, prior to a technical review committee, this required statement that they're required to make. And so I think if they will do that between now and the next TRC meeting, then we have another TRC meeting, and then the neighbors will have more information, and they will be able to have questions as a result of what the developer said, because that statement, remember, says detailing issues raised at the required meeting and solutions or consolations presented or proposed. We haven't seen any solutions or consolations that were raised by comments because of comments at the neighborhood meeting. So all we're asking is that the developer comply with this. And again, it doesn't say specifically a copy shall be mailed at a certain date, but it does say then the preliminary plat can be submitted for consideration by TRC. You know, if you take the position that it doesn't have a date, well, what can they send out that sign-in sheet and the letter when they break ground? No, it needs to be done before the meeting of the Technical Review Committee. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have comments? Yes. State your name and address for the record.
Yes.
Yep.
My name is Barbara Hartung. I live at 10310 Covered Bridge Road.
You may need to just pull the microphone down a little bit.
Okay,
There
I'm
you
very
go.
short.
Do you have
all
something
get
for
that?
the overhead?
This is simply the reg that, can I put it here?
Yes. Well,
This is what we're talking about. And I highlighted that a copy of the sign-in sheet and statement shall, that's not something that can be waived, it has to be done, mailed by the developer to each identified neighbor, whether present or absent at the meeting. Therefore, if people didn't sign up, it doesn't make any difference, they're entitled to it. The preliminary plat would then, that means after. You can look it up in the dictionary, it's the clear meaning of the word then. Only then can the preliminary plat be submitted for consideration to the TRC. All we're asking is that the order that is set out in the regs be followed. And that seems to me that means that we need to delay any final decision from this committee and bring it back on again at the next meeting. Otherwise, the regs have been not followed. And it sort of denies us our due process rights and our rights as neighbors to be able to be fully informed in what is going on. Thank you.
in response to that question, I mean, I think by the amount of people here in this courtroom today, I think there was a lot of people that were fully informed and aware of the meeting.
Will this be in the record?
That is on the record, yes. So I'll say that, and in response to the question, there is, once again, no decisions that are made at this meeting. None at all. We have simply provided agency comments and allowed the public to go ahead and comment, which you all are at the hearing. So obviously there was notification at some point that you all received to even be here today, or you just haphazardly wandered into the courtroom at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon and said, oh, look, there's a meeting. So I believe the answer to that would be that there was some notice provided and there's no decisions that are made at today's meeting. So do you, I believe over here, yes. You'll just have to come up here and speak if you're going to come.
My address is 330 3303 Hidden Springs, just off of Covered Bridge Road. And I just wanted to let you know that the only reason we're here today was because of the Nextdoor app. We had somebody that came on and said, you know, boldly, this is an important thing. We had no idea that this was happening. Now, admittedly, we're not an adjoining neighbor, but we have a farm that's on that corridor very close by. So to assume that people that are here today are here because they received a notification would be an error. So, you know, Nextdoor app was a really good platform that somebody alerted some of us to that.
Thank you. So legally, just to answer that question, legally, the only people that have to be notified are anybody's property that touches the development. Unless it's a zoning change, which then changes in the regs that they would have to notify everybody within 500 feet. So just to answer that question, that's why not everybody gets an actual notification from either the developer or when we do our mailings for all of our hearings. So who was next? Yes, right here.
I'm Dana Elliott, and I live at 10066 Covered Bridge Road. I'm directly across the street. So I have several concerns. Light pollution, the amount of lighting that's going to be going in, the noise pollution, not just from the development, but from the construction going on for years. How many years? That street is so busy that speeding goes on constantly. To add 100 homes and then more, perhaps in the future, with one entrance is a very big concern. We've had a death on our property from somebody who was turning out of our neighbor's property, and the truck veered and hit a tree and was killed on our property. And that was just as it is now. When 71 is having issues, it backs up our street like crazy. The sand and gravel trucks that travel down there, it's just a lot for a residential community and such a narrow 2-lane street. My concern also, since water's not here, is the tie-in to our water line. Is that going to affect us? The water pressure? I know they said about the fires. The environmental runoff, adequate septic, surface water pollution, that's all been brought up, but a concern. It looks like there's no proposed green space. They're going to take out really most, if not all, the trees. I mean, there's the open space, but on the home lots, that's one thing. So I think that the existing community wants any planned growth to preserve the stability and character of the community, charm of Oldham County, which I feel like noise, light, speeding, traffic, all those things do not add at all by adding this development. And we got our notice, but I had to notify a few other people. They never even got any notice. So that was an issue. I know we didn't have 2 days of mail, and but that is a concern if you have a snowstorm and you have a president's death, to postpone a meeting as well. So I think a lot of people were at that meeting last month at the evening that would have liked to have been here today. Thanks.
Thank you. You have
a number of, and I appreciate that comment and the various parts of it. What I would just note from our perspective, of course, there was a discussion about transportation. Mr. Stillman, you brought that up. Of course, that would be part in any impact that we're going to have on 329, for example, is going to be part of that discussion. And so that will certainly be an issue that we're going to look at as part of this development prior to the Planning Commission, which is a requirement. We already talked about that. And I believe there's also discussion about trees, for example, as part of the development plan that we have to present to the Planning Commission. So again, any concern about trees that have been developed that was raised a moment ago as well would have to be incorporated as part of the plan that we submit to the Planning Commission for their consideration. So I just want to make sure that we're fully aware of some of those are concerns. They're concerns at any subdivision, if I'm going to be perfectly frank, and they're concerns that always have to be addressed prior to the Planning Commission's consideration, which we fully expect to fulfill it on our end as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, right here. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, is he coming? Or okay, it's you, and I'll get you. Okay.
Karen Winter, 10401 Covered Bridge Road.
Hold on. Slow down. You may have been too fast for our note taker on that one.
Sorry. 10401 Covered Bridge Road. Your name, please. Karen, Caryn, Winter.
Thank you.
My only comment is I'm a developer as well, and I would just like to go on record by saying that when I travel different communities, I am upheld to the requirements that are set forth in the regulations, and I would hope that you would please grant us that here as well.
Thank you. Right here, and then we'll go to you right in front of him.
Hi, Jeff Perellis, 10200 Covered Bridge Road. Our driveway is directly across from the existing driveway. I just want to put in the record the amount of traffic that our farm generates. The horse trailers coming in and out, the shavings, that we have just, it's like a little city. So in the transportation, I want to make sure they count cars coming from our property. We have farriers, vets, and then we have a bed and breakfast on the property as well. So a lot of traffic. My understanding, a lot of times the drives are going to come across from each other. In a subdivision, you want traffic to be, so I'm a little worried about the entrance to this being 100 yards or 150 yards away and not compatible with the traffic that our property generates.
Do you want to ask that?
Can you clarify your address again? I'm just not seeing it on the map, and I probably heard it wrong.
What's that?
Your address?
10200 Covered Bridge Road.
Okay, I'm just not seeing that on the plat. So I'm going to make a note to make sure that we have that on here if it's not included on here, or if you need to.
10200, 10204.
Oh, 204. Okay, see, that's what I see on here. Okay,
Yeah,
just
there's some multiple.
I just want to make sure that we didn't need to make sure that we need to fix any addressing issues.
Yeah, we
Okay,
have
thank you so much.
There's 4 houses up
Okay.
there too.
Oh, yeah, they go further back. Thanks.
Do you need to address anything in regards to his statements about traffic or anything?
Well, I mean, as far as the traffic, the volumes are typically based on counts that are generated by or taken by the state. So it should take in the traffic you have coming in and out. But as far as the location of the driveway, Bob, if you could just include the location of existing drives or entrances across the street, so that can be checked. That's a great point.
Right. Yep.
Ice.
You're
Mark Fackler. My address is 10310 Cover Bridge Road. I'm across the street. Mr. Ward, in relation to the septic, is there going to be an environmental impact study needed? You're talking about setbacks and percolation, but given that this is Triple Springs, there's obviously a perched groundwater table on this property that I believe there are 3 blue lines, not 2, Mr. Silliman. I think there's 2 along Covered Bridge going straight up, and then the one that bisects the property in the middle.
Well, there appeared to be one. There was one a little bit off the property to the side, and one a little north. So
There's one in the corner, one that goes straight up, and then one.
Those will be identified.
Right. So, as it relates to those, no, that's okay. As it relates to those, are we looking at? I'm doing rough calculations, roughly 14 million gallons of effluent annually if this thing's completely developed that are going to be discharged to the groundwater. And he brought up the forever chemicals. These are emerging contaminants. They were just named as hazardous under CERCLA in April of 24. The state, as well as the Army Corps, are in the process. They've put together a task force to regulate these. The MCLs, the maximum contamination limit, is 4 nanograms per liter, or 4 parts per trillion, which is exponentially more lower than the vinyl chloride released in East Palestine. So my question is, in your assessment of these septics, are you going to take into account that the groundwater may be impacted by these chemicals, which are forever chemicals? There is no proven cleanup technology. And I understand that PERC's fine. That the problem is it's perking to somewhere. So, is that going to be taken into consideration? And are you going to require them to take a look at this?
Okay, so as far as environmental assessments go, and just with my decade of experience, environmental assessments have usually come from a third party that's looking at commercial or property that potentially had some kind of contamination spill, whether it was diesel fuel tanks, radioactive material, was there something buried or destroyed there? Being that this is not commercial, I haven't been contacted by any third party to see if there was anything, at least because they would normally contact me.
But I guess my question is, do we just
Now-
ignore it because it's residential?
Well, we don't ignore it. It's always something consideration. Now, as far as like those forever chemicals, my role with the health department is infectious disease. It's human waste and contaminants that can be directly impacted into humans themselves. The idea being is going through the KRS and the regulations that we have with on-site sewage program, you have to establish a separation distance from the bottom of your lateral trench to any restrictive horizon. That is, if we can, 18 inches. If there's not 18, you can go to 12 inches of separation with some pre-treatment options to accommodate that extra 6 inches of depth you don't have. The idea being is that once your effluent passes through 12 inches of soil, because the idea being is that every handful of soil has, back me up, Perry, 1 million bacteria colonies that are breaking down nitrogen, E. coli,
Understood.
fecal coliform. You're turning effluent using biomedia through natural soil back into groundwater. We're not recycling our water.
Right. No, I understand that.
Right.
My point is, we're not talking about that. We're talking about contaminants that do not break down. So,
Which doesn't, okay, I hate saying that's not my job or not my concern. It is, but that doesn't impact me in the health department. I'm infectious disease.
so this is a technical question for you all. Do we just approve a development and ignore that which is not in our purview, but we can understand could potentially be a concern?
Honestly, no one's ever brought this up before.
I know, because it's brand new.
Right.
And I understand.
But there's
there's
no-
a task force, but we're going to approve something. And once it's in place, I mean, your job is to protect
Right.
the public.
I don't want to be reactive.
Stormwater, this is going to go to stormwater. It's going to go to Harrods Creek. These are chlorinated chemicals that do not break down. So my question is, are we rushing this thing? Are we going to go ahead and allow this to go in before the state and the Army Corps is able to get guidelines for these chemicals? Because would we allow somebody to put
it's been the
vinyl
status
chloride
quo,
into the
right?
ground?
It's been what we've been doing for decades and decades, which I totally agree. We should not just stick our head in the sand and just ignore it. But I think, Jim, would you agree? Like with division of water,
And so, I mean, you're talking about chemicals that they've not been specified. We don't know that do we know that they're going to be used on this site, that they're going to be expelled on this site?
Do I have an opportunity to educate you all on what I have researched
And we'd
prior
be glad
to the
sit down
planning
with
and
you,
zoning?
but from the standpoint of just what we're looking at right now, are those chemicals that this site is definitely going to generate? I don't know that we know that. And again, like Charlie said, it's difficult to regulate something that's not regulated yet.
71 has, let's say, every drop of radiator fluid or oil or gasoline that goes on to 71. I have no grounds or rules to go out there and start policing that,
And
which is kind of unrealistic.
I mean, if we're just going to
anyway.
ignore it, then that's
Right, but I have to have a rule and regulation in order to enforce it. I can't just pick and choose arbitrarily what hill I'm going to die on. I have to have a KRS. There are regulations and laws. I'm the person that enforces the laws through the regulations.
so. If we get this in place, okay, that's I'm
Your
trying
concern
to
is
find-
totally valid, but it's out of the realm of my enforcement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
As well, the developers also just informed me, just to say in a very generic sense, that these are standard systems. They will not be utilizing chlorine in any way, shape, or form. So don't know if that also addresses the concerns at this point, but we're not anticipating using all the kind of chemicals.
And even those systems, those surface discharge systems that are using chlorination, those are running through dechlorination as well. Chlorine is good and bad. It naturally will break down over time. It does lose its efficacy, but yes, those systems, other than what household chemicals that people will be putting through their septic systems, which, again, I'm a huge proponent of, like, more natural the better. Don't go heavy with the bleach or anything when cleaning houses. Chlorine on itself will naturally denature. It's not going to stay there because bacteria are going to be prevalent inside that septic tank, which is going to be offsetting whatever chlorine went down the drain to scrub the toilet or something else. So you have very valid concerns. I will keep those in mind and things, but it's the hard part, or at least the frustration, because again, I don't want to say that's not my concern, it's not my job. I'm not like that, I promise you. If there's someone that I can speak with Division of Water, and I think Jim and I probably do need to start thinking about addressing this type of thing. Its impact just hasn't been something that we've acknowledged in the past, but I think it's kind of ignorance. It's not stupidity, I promise you. It's just ignorance. It's not something that someone has brought to our attention. I am more than welcome to sit down with you. I am a public servant. You all, if live out here, you pay my salary. I'm here for you. Education and information is one of my biggest roles, but if by all means you have information you'd like to share with me, please do. I need to come around, so.
Was there any, right here in the red?
Hi, can I give a P.O. box?
Yeah.
P.O. Box 373 LaGrange. I think the majority of people here, we all know that the freight train of population growth is happening in Oldham County, and there's not a lot we can do about that. And as we look to expand and grow so that people can come and experience Oldham County the way us who live here get to, we have to come up with more places for them to live. But I think that one of the biggest concerns that I'm hearing from the community and I've heard from some constituents is the traffic flow. And as I look through, our shift plan that we have currently, can you give a broad idea of the timeline for the traffic impact study versus development beginning, the processes beginning if everything moves through and is approved, so that we can make sure there's so many issues on Highway 329 to begin with that need to be addressed in our transportation budget. But this one in particular, when we're bringing in that many more vehicles to that 2-lane highway, what's the timeline of development once the traffic impact study is done?
I mean, with regard to just the study and its timeline, it's required before the Planning Commission meeting. So if they apply to have a Planning Commission hearing, that will be ready for review before that.
And then the development is
their stage of or timeline and development, they have to answer that.
Yeah. Okay. Before it's approved and moving forward and added into our plan to expand the roads and make sure we have the budget.
Well, whether the road is expanded, typically that's a result of the traffic impact study. And if it were to determine that left turn lanes or right turn lanes were required, it would typically be a requirement of that development. But again, without seeing that traffic impact study yet, it may not require that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go back here because I did see you first. I'm sorry. I'll get you in the blue next.
My name is Janice Jewell. My address is 3616 Constantine Drive. I am an adjoining property landowner. Of course, what's already been addressed is the traffic on 329. That is a concern. I just wanted to let you all know I have walked this property. It's beautiful. It's rolling hills. It's just absolutely gorgeous. But I just want to let you all know, are you aware there are sinkholes? We're talking about water and the water drainage. There's a sinkhole in our neighborhood. There is a sinkhole over there. My concern is with all this digging of all 93 lots and the infrastructure, I don't know the nature of sinkholes. Is it a possibility that they're going to grow? Are other ones going to show up? Are they going to show up in our neighborhood or the adjoining neighborhoods? Are you all aware that there are sinkholes over there?
We're aware that there are sinkholes throughout the county, throughout the state. You can look at the geological survey to see whether you're in a karst prone or non-karst area, but yes, they can occur anywhere.
Yes, and so
we're
you all are
so
aware of
close to them, and we are. And development can occur around them. There's ways to remediate sinkholes and build commercial, industrial, residential facilities around them. So typically they are identified. If they're identified by a surveyor, we have them put them on the record plat and do what can be done. Sometimes they're not identified that early just because of their location, if they're in the woods, and they have to be addressed during construction. But it is something I think everyone's aware of.
So just for the record,
Sure.
they're there.
They are.
And you all need to try and mitigate any future problems.
They're small and large. Yeah.
Okay,
And
thank
just
you.
in regard to that, so I have the largest setback distance for a lateral field is for a sinkhole at 70 feet. So like the day we were out there, I just walked a little path all around that I come across any and at that time. But I'll go back out there and every single lot will have an assessment there. So if I do come across property number whatever that does have a sinkhole, that lateral field will be maintained by regulation a certain setback distance from that sinkhole. Well, Jim was right. You can build houses and other structures, but even if you were to, you really don't delete sinkholes, you fill them, you plug them, you still have to allow the groundwater to go somewhere. Even if that sinkhole, once I have put eyes on it and notated it, it's there forever. It could be filled in and dressed up. I don't care. That vein into the ground and the conduit is still going to remain. I will still have that 70-foot setback distance to remain from it. So if there's any concern of effluent septic system into groundwater contamination through the sinkhole, I'm following a regulation that has a 70-foot setback distance to remain away from it. So if they are out there, I will get I took the 10,000-foot view. I will go back to the 10-foot view to each property. If I come across them, by all means, they will be marked, bullseyed 70 feet all the way around them. They become just dead zones for me, and I'll make sure to keep those lateral fields away from them by regulation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. In the blue.
My name is Mary Lowry. I live at 326 Maple Avenue. I'm not an adjoining landowner.
He'll switch it over if you want to set it down there. It'll get there.
I'm here to address water quality issues that need to be examined as these houses are built that will impact the watersheds in Oldham and Jefferson County, as well as create issues with runoff in a Louisville Water Company source water protection area. It's called Triple Springs for a reason, and it's across the road from Spring Run Farm. And there are 3 blue line streams. The proposed subdivision will create a tremendous amount of impervious area, septic waste, and runoff, which will jeopardize specifically the Wolf Pen Harrods Creek watershed, which is what you see. The watershed is already compromised, and this development will negatively impact any restoration efforts currently underway. The location within the Wolf Pen Harrods Creek watershed runoff will enter a tributary to Harrods Creek. Harrods Creek is also a tributary to the Ohio River, which is a drinking water source, as well as a prime recreation spot. Land surrounding Harrods Creek is considered a source water protection area with the Louisville Water Company, and is the Louisville Water Company involved in the source water protection area? That's a Louisville Water Company map, their source water protection area. Increased, let's see. The geology in this region is also karst prone. This map, so you're talking about sinkholes. Water in karst landscapes is highly vulnerable to pollution, since the connection between surface water and groundwater is more direct than other aquifer types. Increased impervious surface area and paving for this development will increase runoff, cause more erosive forces in the creek. Additionally, the creek will receive increased pollutants from homes and roads, specifically septic, oils and grease, fertilizer, pesticides, sediments, and animal waste. I ask that you look closely at the impact this will have on our county if built, and for years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Craig Stein, 4008 Hidden Falls Drive, Prospect 40059. So I have a couple of technical questions. One with the the current slope of the land, I'm seeing that it slopes from the north, Harrods Creek, down towards 329. Is that correct? And then possibly from the east down towards the west as well. My question is this, is that as we remove a largely open field that can take on whatever stormwater and replace it with 90 plus homes, where is that water going to go? Is that going to be coming down towards 329? And if so, where is that going to stay on the north side of 329, or is that going to come under a culvert to the existing stream that is already across on the adjacent side of the highway?
All right.
If you know it.
Well, they're going to be required to design stormwater detention in accordance with our current ordinances, that those require that their post-construction runoff doesn't exceed their current runoff, their pre-construction runoff. So their designer will locate basins within the project, and he's identified a few proposed locations to do just that. So before it leaves their site at these various locations, and if it's leaving to enter the stream within the site or along the roadside, it doesn't exceed those current runoff levels. And they're required to model this for the 2, 10, and 100-year rain events, in addition to if they're discharging to the state right-of-way, which is 329, the state requires they model the 25-year rain event also.
Because I've been here 10 years, and already we've seen where the entire roadway is flooded with the existing runoff that we have now.
And keep in mind also that when we say 2, 10, and 100-year event, that's actually the probability that storm occurs within a certain time period. It doesn't mean that that storm only occurs once every 100 years. It means that there's a 1% chance that storm is that magnitude.
Okay. And so whose responsibility is that's going to be submitted
that is
to your department?
That's correct.
Okay.
So when I mentioned that they're required to obtain a stormwater quality management and erosion control permit, if this is approved by the Planning Commission and it goes forward with them developing construction plans to actually build the subdivision, before they can build it, they submit those plans to my office for review. Again, they also have to submit those to the Division of Water for the KYR 10 permit, but at that time, we review those specific details and calculations and ensure they meet our requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Could I ask a follow-up to that? So if we have water draining...
Just step up a little bit closer. So there's a very big
myself,
there's
so
a very big YouTube audience, so you got to get close so everybody can hear you.
Okay. If we've got water draining down to Covered Bridge, and it can't be kept on the north side, I mean, there's no way. Where does it go? And if it is directed across the street, what rights do those neighbors have?
So you're talking about any runoff discharged from their site crossing 329. Imagine it this way: if there's a 24-inch culvert under 329, and that handles the water now, what their design is intended to show is that when the water is released from their site, it's collected and only released so that 24-inch pipe still handles the runoff, so it doesn't exceed what's currently there.
But if it comes and it floods the land on the other side,
what they do is, Bob, you may want to add, if I'm speaking for you, but typically they'll design a basin with an outlet structure, and that basin holds the water for 24 to 48 hours and slowly releases it.
And that's on their side?
And that's on their property. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You have a follow-up?
Chime in and add one more. Craig Stein again. So I routinely travel home through Sleepy Hollow, take a left on Covered Bridge, come right by the front of this property. And it's not just the deluge rainstorms. It's a very common occurrence that after any kind of sizable rain, water runs across of 329 already. So we have a problem already with the drainage there because that entire land mass to the right as you're heading west towards Prospect is above grade. And there's no culvert on that right-hand side. It all has to find its way underneath to the stream that's on the left-hand side. So we get water that we're riding through that is dangerous when you're traveling at 55 mile an hour speeds. We get on cold days where that's a frozen patch when all around is dry. So that whole area needs to be studied for that as well.
Well, and if that's something that you need to coordinate with my office and then in turn the State Highway Department on improvements that could be made to improve existing drainage, but that's an existing condition.
Sure. Well, and this isn't going to make it any better.
No,
my point. So
but by
okay.
ordinance, they're required to
agreed.
not exceed the existing condition.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So two things. One, I know that water because I drive through that. It does not have any sediment in it. It's clear water. And Jim, who is responsible for maintaining the basins, the retention basins post-development? So in 10 years, who takes care of those basins?
So when they go to record plat the property, if this is approved and they go forward and build it and they get a record plat to build this, at that time the developer enters into a stormwater maintenance agreement that's filed with that record plat in the clerk's office. It implies that or intends that the HOA, the developer at the beginning, and then for the perpetuity, the HOA of that subdivision maintains the stormwater facilities. Now, we understand, though, as a county that at some level, if there's an issue with a basin and the cost to repair it exceeds what the HOA can afford, then that's where the county gets involved. But ultimately, their HOA is responsible for general maintenance.
And what typically is the cost of building a retention basin and then maintaining that basin over time? What's the HOA going to be responsible for?
General maintenance. They're not building it, so the basin gets built by the developer, and then it just becomes, if they can mow it constantly or keep it to a condition that it performs, then costs could be low.
And if not? And if not,
that's another if. I mean,
okay.
I thought I saw a hand back here, maybe? No? Okay, I must have dreamed one. Anybody else? Going once, going twice? All right. So with that, so if you were notified as an adjoining property owner of today's hearing, and the developer, the applicant chooses to move forward with this case, you will be notified again. So our filing deadline, the next opportunity they would have to go before the Planning Commission would be the February date. So if they chose to move forward and could make any changes to their plans that the agencies have told them that may need to be made, the next filing deadline would be January 22nd, and that would be for a February 25th hearing. So the way our process typically works is that filing deadline occurs in January. Typically that last week of January, we start putting together our agendas for the following month. So those mailings will come out soon after that. Now, I will, in full transparency, have conversations with the applicant about potentially having another TRC, and I will communicate that to Mr. Porter. My concern about that is that there's no decisions made at this hearing. You're going to receive the same agency comments that you received today. It only really allows other comments. Anybody that's either watching this on YouTube or it's in the record can feel free to email or call our office to express their comments. If they're unable to be at the Planning Commission hearing, we will read those into the record, and the Planning Commission will hear all of those comments as well. But I will have conversations with both parties to figure out if that's something that we want to do. They are going to have assured me by the nod of a head that they are going to mail out to everybody the sign-in sheet and the notes from that neighborhood meeting. And so if you've been notified of this hearing, you'll be notified of any potential hearings after that, whether we do another TRC or whether they move forward to the Planning Commission. So with that being said, that will adjourn this meeting at 2:11. Thank you.